Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Bill. We're in the Mythic Adventures book today. We are continuing the War Magic series. We are on Divine Spells, level 5 today. So, without further ado, I will find the spells chapter and we will begin. What we do is we look at these spells, we compare them to what we would think a traditional medieval battle would play out normally, and how being creative, we could use these spells to do a lot of damage and gain control of the fight. So a lot of spells, though useful to your players, aren't necessarily useful to large-scale warfare. Since these are the divine spells, we will go over the cleric list first for 5th level, and then we will go over the druid spell after, skipping over all the repeat spells. So 5th level cleric mythic spells: Break Enchantment, Breath of Life, Flame Strike, Lend Path, Pillar of Life, Plane Shift, Steel Power, Wall of Stone. A lot of those don't sound very useful, but we will read further to find out for sure. So, Break Enchantment. Against non-mythic effects, the spell automatically succeeds without requiring a caster level check. Against mythic effects, add your tier to your caster level check. The maximum level of a spell this spell can remove is 5 plus half your tier. Augmented 7th. If you expend 2 uses of mythic power, you can apply a removed enchantment, transmutation, or curse to the creature that originally cast it. The creature must be a valid target of the spell and on the same plane as you, and it gets a saving throw at the effect's original DC. That's an interesting way to use it. Break Enchantment I can only see being useful if enchantment's been used against your army or against specific soldiers, but I don't see it being useful for the military applications. Breath of Life. The spell heals 5d12 points of damage, plus 1 point per caster level, maximum plus 25. It can revive a creature that died of hit point damage within the past 2 rounds. If the target was slain by a death effect that allowed a saving throw, this spell allows the creature to attempt another save against that effect. If this save is successful, the creature is revived with minus 10 HP plus the amount healed by this spell. Interesting. Augmented 9th. If you expend 2 uses of mythic power, you can target up to 1 creature per caster level within 30 feet of you. Alternatively, you can target 1 creature that has been dead for a number of rounds up to your caster level. So for pretty much a weaker version of Raise Dead, it's a pretty interesting spell. It's very useful because it does a lot more hit point reviving, and the amount of rounds, depending upon your mythic level, would give it benefit. I just don't see it being useful practically in a big military battle. Flame Strike. This sounds like this one's going to be very useful. If it's anything like the spell I was using against Strahd, it should be very useful. Flame Strike. The damage dealt increases to 1d8 per caster level, maximum 15d8. The area increases to a 40-foot, into a 20-foot radius, 40-foot high cylinder. You may have the divine half of the damage affect only one specific creature type as the Bane weapon quality. That's pretty cool. And yes, it does more damage than the one I was using. So put that on a couple of one-use items and launch them into the middle of your enemy forces. It'd have to be nothing bigger than a flask that could be thrown over their head. As long as you got it 20 feet or more past your front lines, you would be able to detonate it on the enemy and not have it affect your military. You could also, alternatively, if you have access to flight, drop these as bombs on the military or siege area. Lend Path. That is a spell I am not very familiar with. Let's see what it does. If it gives us enough detail in this book. And it is another spell listed that is not actually detailed in the book. I'm starting to see a lot of those. It's like they didn't double check this when they produced it. Pillar of Life. Pillar of Life. The damage healed increases to 3d8 points of damage plus 1 point per caster level, maximum plus 20. The damage dealt to undead creatures increases to 1d8 points of damage per caster level, maximum 10d8, or 2d6 points of damage per caster level for undead vulnerable to bright light, maximum 20d6. If a dead creature is brought into the pillar's square, and that creature could be revived by breath of life, the pillar of life ends, and the creature returns to life as per breath of life. That's cool. That has a double effect. I really like that. Right now, I'm not thinking of how I would use that as a weapon for the second effect. But the first effect, doing all that extra damage to undead, put that on objects that you can just chuck into their area, and that would work. They would be expensive because it's 5th level magic and it's mythic magic, but it would be well worth it. Plane Shift. If you've been to the destination plane and are familiar with a location there, you may choose that location and arrive on target at that location with anyone else you transport with the spell. Augmented. If you expend 2 uses of mythic power, you grant transported creatures the effect of planar adaptation spell upon arrival, lasting for 1 hour. That's cool. The older planar adaptation spells, the 3rd edition ones, were pretty useful. They lasted hours upon hours upon casting. I'm not, like, I've read the spell when I was going through the spells, but I don't remember what it does in Pathfinder. So it's one of those spells I just don't know. So Steel Power. And Steel Power is not listed actually with any description. So another spell. if anyone's watching all these mythic war magic videos, I'd like to see somebody make a list of all the spells that are listed but nothing to read about in one of the comments below. Wall of Stone. All wall spells are useful. Let's just see what the mythic Wall of Stone does. The wall is 1 inch thick per 2 caster levels. The wall's hardness increases to 12. Augmented 7th. If you expend 2 uses of mythic power, the wall is impassable to ethereal travel and spells such as Pass Wall and Phase Door. The wall is immune to non-mythic Disintegrate, Shatter, Sympathetic Vibration, and other non-mythic magical effects that specifically affect stone, including Earthquake, Soften Earth and Stone, and Transmute Rock to Mud. That is pretty cool. The wall spells themselves are good because you could drop them and cut your enemy's forces or force them to go down different areas to regain into themselves, or you could use it to separate your force from their force to make a quick retreat and regroup, and then try to lead that force down, say, a well-trapped area or into a ravine where you have the high ground and you can launch a bunch of stuff down on them, stuff like that. So that would end the 5th level divine spells from the cleric. Let's look at the ones that are listed amongst the druid. Baleful Polymorph. That's going to be an entertaining one. Cure Critical Wounds. Fire Snake. Lend Path. Stone Skin. Wall of Fire. Wall of Thorns. Already, without reading it, Wall of Fire and Wall of Thorns are going to be very useful. Baleful Polymorph will be very entertaining, especially if you have a way to apply that to multiple soldiers. And the Cure Critical Wounds we went over in the previous video under Cleric. The previous Divine video. So let's start with Baleful Polymorph and go from there. The saving throw changes to Fortitude Partial and Will Partial. A creature that fails the Fortitude save automatically fails the Will save. A target with the Shape Changer subtype that fails its save can't use its shape changing to shift out of its new form. A creature that succeeds at a Fortitude save is partially transformed into the intended animal. For 1 minute per level, it takes on cosmetic features appropriate to the animal and becomes one size category closer to the animal size. Augmented 9th. If you expend 4 uses of mythic power, the spell affects all other creatures with 8 hit dice or fewer in a 1 mile radius. Damn. Affected creatures transform into small or smaller animals appropriate to the local environment. You can select a number of creatures up to your tier to not be affected. So the Augmented 9th, you need to be a 9th level mythic, so you have to have 9 mythic levels, 9 tiers, to be able to use that. But that itself, if you backed off from a siege, you could then turn everybody in that siege into an animal with that effect. Now the entertaining way I had to use Baleful Polymorph, this would be expensive as a military expenditure, but you could put Baleful Polymorph onto ammunition, sling bullets, because your rows that are 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th behind the initial shield wall could sling this over everybody's head into the enemy. Or you could put it on arrowheads and crossbow bolts and bullets if you're using the black powder guns, and shoot it into the enemy. each enemy that's hit with one of those ammunitions, and you say maybe you made 100 ammunitions. So you have 100 shots that could possibly hit, and we'll assume like 80 of them hit, and then they turn them into like toads or something. Well, they get a save, of course, and if they fail that save, you're looking at soldiers that were like standing shoulder to shoulder, and some of them are turning into toads now on the ground. The lack of manpower would cause some collapse, but then the fright of all of a sudden they just got pelted by this thing that did like a D4 damage, being the sling, and turned into a toad. Cure critical wounds would be great as an object that they could have, your own army could have, that they could activate, and it would disintegrate the object when you side him. That would heal them the critical wound amount. Fire snake. That is not one that I'm familiar with. Let's see if they wrote it in here. Fire snake. The damage dealt increases to 1d10 points of damage per level, maximum 15d10. Any creature that fails its saving throw against the spell is grappled by a snake made of fire that lasts for 1 round per caster level. The snake can be dispelled, but not attacked. A grappled creature takes 1d10 points of fire damage on your turn each round. The snake's CMB is equal to your caster level plus your tier, and its CMD is equal to its CMB plus 10. Augmented Sixth. If you expend 2 uses of mythic power, the maximum damage increases to 20d10, and any creature that fails its saving throw against the spell is pinned instead of grappled. That is very interesting. I'm trying to think how you could use that other than it running wild whenever you would use it as a one-use object that you toss into the enemy's forces. And that's the only use that appears to me without having the spellcaster there to cast it. But that said, the spellcaster could cause a lot of terror with that snake being there. Lend Path, which we already found out wasn't on here. Stone Skin. Stone Skin. The target gains a +4 bonus on saving throws against disease, poison, and stun effects. There's a 50% chance any critical hit or sneak attack against the target is treated as a normal hit, as if the target was wearing medium fortification armor. That's pretty useful. Put that in like amulets that your soldiers have, especially your very front of the line soldiers, or the ones that are most likely to be surrounded. So if you had special forces moving in, which would normally be your PCs, but if you had special forces moving in on a siege, give them that where they can activate it and say for a couple of minutes. So for 10, 20 rounds, they'd get the benefit of the AC bonus and the extra +4 on saves against all that, and the fortified chance. That would be pretty nice. So Wall of Fire and Wall of Thorns. Wall of Fire can cut your enemy's forces and cause them to move. Depending upon how you place it, you could set like a whole shield row on fire. You might be able to affect multiple rows because you could set it, say, third back, and assuming there are 5 soldiers deep, you set it third back. Okay, going towards your men, the first row next to it would be taking damage, and the row behind that would be taking damage, and the row it's sitting on would be taking lots of damage, and they'd begin panicking and trying to get out of it. Wall of Fire. The wall's damage increases to 2d6 points of fire damage to creatures within 10 feet. So if you did it like I said, even the ones that are up against your shield wall would be taking damage. 1d6 points of fire damage to those past 10 feet but within 20 feet. So even your men would be taking some damage at that distance. And 2d8 points of fire damage plus 1 point of fire damage per caster level to any creature passing through it. Any creature passing through the wall or is within 5 feet of the wall when it is created must succeed a reflex saving throw or catch fire. Attempts to extinguish this fire uses the spell save DC. Augmented Fifth. If you expend 2 uses of mythic power, you can move the wall 5 feet in any direction as a move action on your turn. Moving the wall into a fireproof barrier, such as a stone wall, destroys the part of the wall that overlaps the barrier. So your wall will get shorter as you run it into something that is fireproof, like a stone wall. Pretty cool. Wall of Thorns. The damage dealt increases to 30 minus the creature's AC. Any creature adjacent to the wall is automatically grappled by it. Any creature that begins its turn grappled by the wall takes 2d6 points of damage. Half of this damage is bludgeoning, and the other half is piercing. For a purpose of escaping this grapple, the wall's CMD is 10 plus your caster level plus your tier. Augmented Sixth. If you expend 2 uses of mythic power, the wall automatically grapples creatures other than you within 10 feet. Any creature grappled by the wall takes 2d6 points of bleed damage. If a creature doesn't escape the wall's grapple on its next turn, the wall automatically pins it. Ooh. So, originally, casting this mythic version, it'll do 30 points of damage minus the AC of the target. 30 points of damage in most military engagements, unless you're fighting the veterans that have 4 levels, would probably kill most of the soldiers that get hit by it, minus their armor. So they would get, we'll assume they're well armored. The well armored ones would get up to like a 10 or 11 subtracted from that. So that's still 19 points of damage, 20 points of damage. So that could destroy most creatures. It would do what a wall does. It would separate forces. And then if you use the augmented version, it's now grabbing and doing bleed damage in addition to all that. And if they don't get out of the grapple the following turn, they're now pinned where they can't move, taking the damage every turn. Put that on some one-use items where it just comes out and makes a straight line. Based on the person throwing it, they make a mental connection so they could draw the line with their mind where they want it. And it hits and does that. That could be very devastating, just like any other wall. Well, that ends the divine spells of 5th level from the for the war magic from the mythic adventures. The next video in this series will be the arcane of level 5. Until we all game again, guys.